This is we're going to talk about Teams architecture for Teams owners. So this is not a Teams architecture brief like a cloud architect would do, or some sort of computer specialist, where it describes all the servers and the virtual machines and how they all interact and everything. This is more along the lines of, if you're a team owner or you're just a user, why is everything, where is everything, and how does this all sort of fit together, and what is this team stuff about in the first place? So that's what this presentation is going to be about. Play with Words is my handle on Twitter, and that's where I've got a few blog entries as well. So I work for a company called Data Analytics Solutions here in Washington, D.C., and we specialize in SharePoint and Microsoft 365 solutions for government agencies. So the the Microsoft 365 Chicago supports the public schools through the Children First Fund. So please donate. Last time they gave one of these, they raised over $10,000. So that's a good charity to give to. So please consider donating. And thanks to all the sponsors that have provided lots of support for this conference. These sort of things are free and are put out there because of their support. So thank you very much to all of the sponsors. So let's talk about Teams and what does Teams get everybody, and why is Teams even here? Over the last couple of years, it's really exploded, and that is mostly due to the COVID and the lockdowns and everything. So it's the latest expression of their unified communications concept, where they started to put together various Microsoft products to create more of a more of a coherent workspace for people to collaborate in. It uses a lot of Exchange and Outlook for email and conversations. They bought Skype for Business, and we're able to put in the video calling and all of the things behind the scenes for Skype for Business into Teams, and then took what they'd already done for Active Directory workspaces, putting Office and SharePoint together, and combined it all into Teams. And it's definitely become Microsoft's flagship application, the hub for teamwork, they call it. So everything that they do is, from now on in Microsoft 365, is going to be built around Teams. It's going to fit inside Teams, or it's going to interact with Teams in some shape or form. March 2017 is when it first showed up, and in a couple of years it had only pulled together 13 million users. With the global pandemic and everybody being sent home, that tripled in like 2 months. And then now it's well in the 200 million daily users. So this is a useful graphic that I found from Regarding 365, Brad Grissom. So it's just this loop concept that Microsoft has on where to work and what you're going to use for certain things. And Teams fits between you and your work center and your entire organization through SharePoint. So it's a solid pivot point for day-to-day work. So you've probably heard of these descriptions of cloud services, whether something's going to be, the levels that the cloud services provide. Infrastructure as a service is the basic cloud. Just basically virtual machines replace your servers. So the cloud service provider would handle all of the virtualization and the actual hardware. But as you move up that ladder, more and more stuff gets managed by the cloud service provider. And of course, Microsoft 365 is that full service SaaS. Applications, data, all of it is being handled in the cloud by Microsoft. So the cloud is not just someone else's computer. Right. So if you take a look at the difference between how it's going to work on your desktop, how it works as a desktop application, how it works as a browser-based application. You can use it on your phone. You can use it on your tablet. It doesn't make any difference what kind of phone you use, Apple or Android, right? So that has to do with the layers that Microsoft has built into Teams and how it interacts with people on whatever device they're going to use it on, right? So the very bottom level, you know, there's the code, TypeScript or jQuery, Angular, all put out there in an HTML interface, and that's where the web sees it. So when you access Teams using a web browser, you're on the left-hand side, you're just going straight down to that HTML layer that is the basic level of Teams. If you install it as a desktop app, and it doesn't make any difference whether it's on Windows or a Mac, there's additional layers put on using C++, and Electron is just an interface that makes it work on your desktop. But this is why there are more features on your desktop application than there are in the browser application, because that C++ or the Electron gives them the ability to add more features to the application, to Teams. So background blur and different buttons show up. So that's where that comes in. If you're using it on your phone or tablet, whether it's Apple or Android, so it goes all the way down to that code starts in React Native, and it's either in Swift or Java. But after that, it's all mobile dependent. So that's why Teams on a phone works very differently than Teams on a desktop, because it's an entirely different code base from that HTML layer on up. So if you're wondering why it works differently depending on what device it is, that's why. So there's that. Now, if we take a look at the logical architecture, and this is just how these applications that they've all put together into Teams on the cloud fit together logically, when just thinking about it. And it's all based around a person. Microsoft likes to base things around the person, the user. What do they know? What are they doing? What is their activity, their content? Okay. On the left-hand side, the person is interacting in Teams through chat or their messages. And if it's that one-on-one, that information is going to get stored or linked to their OneDrive. That has to do with recordings, meetings that they do one-on-one with someone, any calls that they have. Goes back to the Exchange server for their contacts. And then that'll all come back in through their activity feed and how they reply back and forth. So the left-hand side is all about OneDrive. On the right-hand side is all about Teams. If they're participating in posts in a Teams, or if they're having a team meeting or a channel meeting and the recordings are going on there, they're interacting with files in SharePoint, and that's all part of their Microsoft 365 group resources. So those, if it's on the Teams side, not the chat side, then those files and everything like that are most likely going to be found inside SharePoint or in the group workspaces themselves. And this all works together. It's all connected by the Microsoft Graph, which is just the API that Microsoft's developed for all of Microsoft 365 to connect all of the various cloud applications inside. So it's a big monster, but it's all connected through Microsoft 365 and the Microsoft 365 Graph. Right? Now we're going to looking a little deeper inside and seeing actually how some of the cloud applications actually work together, right? There's a lot going on inside Teams. And this is why you can't just have Teams installed on a desktop computer and expect it to work. There is a lot going on behind the scenes, no matter what application, web, desktop, phone, mobile, that you come to Teams in. It's all got to work together using all of these various cloud services. So starting looking over to the left, we see, that's where OneNote comes in, OneDrive, the SharePoint, all the files and everything. And that all interacts through Teams, like we saw in the logical architecture. The MRU, or the most recently used, is an application inside the cloud that provides the individual's most recently used files or most recently used chats or interactions. And so if you've ever seen like office.com, that's how Microsoft 365 knows what you've last saved, what you've last sent, what emails you've been responding to and when. So that's all held inside Teams, inside the MRU. And on the right-hand side, you can see where chat comes in, where calling comes in, whether it's connected to the VoIP network or whether it's on the PSTN for phones. And then down below, you can see where all of the other Teams services and 365 services come in. Exchange will handle the groups and will handle the identity and will handle the information protection. So that's how Microsoft 365 and Teams know who you are and what you have access to. So that is sort of how all of this fits together. And then stream and calling all deal through the media services built into Teams. Those are kind of important because if anybody's ever had a phone call, a phone meeting or having some sort of calling meeting on Teams, and you get that one person who gets a shaky video or a distorted voice. So, and everybody's, oh, the cloud must be slow or the internet's slow or whatever. But it's probably just that person, because inside Teams, there's a service called the media mixer. And so when everyone is in a meeting, all of their audio and all of their video go upstream, one audio and one video stream up to the cloud. Everyone's media streams, all the audio, all the video goes into the media mixer, and it's pushed back down to everyone as a single stream so that they just get that one easy on the bandwidth stream to listen to or to see, to watch. So if someone is distorted, if someone is having lagging problems, or if there's if their internet connection is bad, it doesn't affect everybody else in the team. It's simply them. So if they are having audio issues or they are having video issues, have them turn off their video, because that'll probably resolve their issues. Because the audio stream by the Microsoft engineers, they've fine-tuned it down to 4 kilohertz, which is next to nothing bandwidth-wise. And it still sounds natural when it gets expanded by the media mixer and sent back down. So if someone's having a problem, have them make sure they turn off their video. And that way, it'll clean up the downstream for them. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where everything is based on those slides earlier, right? We saw that, if it's a person, then they're dealing with mostly on their OneDrive side. And if it's for the team, then it's mostly on the SharePoint side. So, and we'll actually show what is going on as well inside a SharePoint, inside a Microsoft 365, right? So just talking about chat, right? If you're in chat, one-to-one, one with a person or group chat, then those images are going to get, those conversations are actually stored in Exchange. So there's no easy way to just download a conversation. You can't just go someplace, find a file with all of your chats and pull it down, because it's all stored inside Exchange and it's all protected by Exchange's information policies. If you share the images, they're going into through the media services. And if you've got the ability to use GIFs, they aren't actually stored as images anywhere in Microsoft 365. They're simply stored in the Exchange as links. So that's it. When you share a file used in a chat, then that file is stored in the person who shared it, OneDrive, in a Microsoft Teams chat files folder, and then automatically shared with, permissions granted to, from their OneDrive to everyone else in the chat, whether it be, like I said, one-on-one or group chat. So you share a PowerPoint deck, you share an Excel file, you share a Word document, it's going to get stored in the sharer's OneDrive and then automatically permissioned for the people who were in that chat. On the other side of this is a team. So if you're in a team and those conversations, those posts, they're also stored in Exchange for the team, not for an individual. Again, the images get stored, images get just come out of media services, GIFs are stored as links, but all the files that are shared in a post in Teams are stored on the SharePoint site that's part of their Microsoft 365 group. And in the documents library, in the folder that is automatically created in that documents library when the channel gets created. So that is where those files will end up. So you can see them on the Files tab in Teams, but they're really on the documents library in the SharePoint site. And if there's a group calendar, like the team calendar gets added in, that calendar is also stored in Exchange, just like the conversations. You can view it in Outlook, or you can view it on the SharePoint site if they add that web part, but the actual data is stored in Exchange. So we'll see this. I'll turn this off and turn my camera off for a second. And I'm going to show it on actual, oops, go this, bring this down. All right, so here is a typical Teams, right? Where I've got a couple of people. So this first one is me. Maybe make this bigger. So I said, okay, so if I have shared, this is me, and if I've shared chat files, then they're going to be in files. Oh no, I don't. All right, made it 2. There we go. Right. So if I go to my OneDrive, I can see that I have shared chat files because I have a Microsoft Teams chat files in my OneDrive. And go in there and I can see that I've shared 2 files at least in Teams. And I know it's been shared, but I can't really find out more about it here. What you can do is you can open it in OneDrive. When you do that, this is the OneDrive, right? It's the same interface. It's the same place, just a different interface. So in my One files, I can see these are the files that I have shared. And if I look at the details, I know that it was shared with this other person automatically because I shared it in a chat. So you can see that they automatically get that shared. They have access to the file through the chat, but it lives, that file exists in my OneDrive. So if I go to the SharePoint site, right? If I go to, if I go to the teams for the IT team, and I look at files, it says documents, general, and there's no file stored in it. But if I look at it, if I open it in SharePoint, then it takes me directly to the documents library inside the SharePoint site for the team in the general folder. So all files that are posted through a team get put into the documents library for the SharePoint site for that team. So that's where files end up when talking about where things happen inside teams, right? So that was files and images and posts, right? But when you do a meeting, it depends on how you do the meeting, right? If it's just a meeting that you schedule and invite people to, then it's sort of a standalone meeting. Any conversations that are happening in the chat for the meeting are stored in Exchange because it's all based on individuals, people. So OneDrive. So again, media services and links for the GIFs. Any files that are shared in a meeting between 2, 3, 4 people, they are stored in those individuals' share drives. So 2 or 3 people or 5 or 6 people in a meeting, you're going to have files, but there's going to be in 5 or 6 different places in the Microsoft 365 and just shared with the other people in the team, right? Again, in that Microsoft Teams chat files folder. If someone takes meeting notes using that wiki tab that shows up, you know, if somebody says meeting notes and you start using it and it's the, you know, provide a title, provide a section and everything, then those files are actually stored in the contributor's OneDrive. Whoever started the section as a .mht file or mhtml file in a newly created folder, automatically created folder called Microsoft Teams Data / and then inside a wiki folder inside that. So it's not a very accessible file. If you wanted to use the data somehow in a different way. And also it's in a hard to use format, mhtml. So if someone records the meeting, then the video is stored in, it goes through Stream, but then is stored in the person who started the recordings OneDrive. So once again, the file of the meeting is in their OneDrive, in their chat, in their recordings folder in OneDrive. So that's, again, most of that's in OneDrive. If the meeting is in the team, if it's set up as a meeting for a specific channel, then again, conversations are in Exchange, GIFs are as links. The files, any files shared in the meeting are stored on the SharePoint site in a documents library in that channel folder. If someone takes meeting notes, then the teams will create a Teams Wikidata library on the SharePoint site. Not a folder in the library, not a folder in Documents library, but a completely separate Teams Wikidata library for the SharePoint site. Again, .mht files. And then any videos that are recorded in the team are stored in the channels folder in Documents library in a folder called Recordings. Okay, so if we go back to SharePoint, right? So I said, this is a team in which they've had a meeting. It's been recorded. Right? If we look at this is the meeting that was recorded. If we look in files, we see that there is a recordings folder, and that is where that meeting recording file is. So you could download it, put it somewhere else, use it somewhere else if you wanted to. But that is where a Teams channel meeting recording goes. So if we look at another person's OneDrive, come on, nope. So this files in the OneDrive. So this would be the recording of a meeting that was held in chat. So if we look at a chat, we can see that there was a recording of this meeting, and that meeting recording is stored in the person who clicked on the recording button's OneDrive in the recordings folder with the name of the chat, if there was one, and then the date and time stamp. So that is where recordings go when you're talking about meetings. Again, a one-to-one, it's stored in OneDrive. A Teams meeting, we'll show that, right? We said that's in that Documents folder recordings for the channel that it was in. So if it's OneDrive, if it's a one-to-one, it's in OneDrive. If it's in a team, it's stored in SharePoint. So going back. All right, so trying to keep it separate in your head. Where to look at these things. So just a note about meeting notes. They are stored in two locations. One is in that Microsoft Teams data and as hidden list items also, because each wiki section is a different MHT file, and these hidden list also tries to keep it together. And it's not searchable. So I'm not sure. There's a lot of documentation and a lot of Google articles, a lot of blogs and everything like that about trying to use a OneNote instead of the meeting notes tabs, because those wiki tabs, while they're useful in the moment, they're not really exportable or savable as a useful file format. So when I build teams, I tend to take that tab right out and throw in a OneNote tab instead, because the OneNote is part of the Microsoft 365 group resource, is stored in the SharePoint. So, and really that's kind of a quick way through all of Teams and where it stores all of the files and all of the data that is going into it in an accessible way for everybody to get at afterwards, right? So there's no one place where you can just have everything is sort of spread all throughout the cloud application and all the cloud services that make up Teams. So just as you use Teams and create more teams and add more teams, then keep in mind the governance, because any rules you set up for OneDrive, any rules you set up, policies you set up for SharePoint, where policies you set up for Exchange Identity services are going to affect how people use Teams and the ability for Microsoft 365 to work at all, right? A lot of the sponsors today they provide backup services, because in Microsoft 365, there is no native backup service. There is no native data backup service, because there's a lot of things going on and in a day-to-day use, even of just one or two teams. There's no need to cache everything, because the cloud services are saving everything every 5 milliseconds. So you're always getting new versions, you're always getting new connections, because anything you do in Teams has to be instantly accessible, instantly available to someone using a desktop computer, someone using a mobile phone, someone using a tablet, right? And Azure is behind the scenes of all of this everywhere, keeping track of everything. The last statistic I saw was that a single Microsoft 365 tenant can have up to 60 trillion objects inside it, files, chats, pictures, links, whatever, 60 trillion and more all the time. No one's even come close to a tenant that has that many, but Microsoft keeps pouring resources and development into Azure to keep expanding that number as just a way to watch out for the future. So that is a big monster, and but it's all running through one single application inside Teams. So with that, are there any questions about anything? I'm also the moderator if anybody needs to. Can you make wiki content searchable? No, you cannot. There is no button. There is no way to add wiki content to the search. The .mht format that it's in, the place that it's in, and the hidden list that actually keeps track of how it runs cannot get added to search. So I would recommend getting rid of wiki tabs entirely and replacing them with OneNote tabs, because a OneNote, if you add a OneNote tab to the OneNote notebook that automatically comes inside the SharePoint site, and you create a Microsoft Teams, it's searchable instantly and part of the Microsoft search. But the wiki content is not, has never been, and cannot be enabled. So kind of useless, my opinion. Are there any other questions out there?
After that explanation, I'm wondering why we even have it.
Why there is a wiki?
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, the biggest mystery about Microsoft Teams is why they used folders and not separate libraries inside a documents library, after teaching us not to use folders for so long. And the second biggest mystery is, why did you create wikis when you have OneNote sitting right there? OneNote back in 2007 was created for Outlook as a way to keep meeting notes, after all. So why create a wiki? I don't know. It's a good
unsolved mysteries.
Added to the list of unsolved mysteries of Microsoft. I love the products. I like making my job out of this, but sometimes some of the things they come up with are mind-boggling. But yes. Just to wrap up the slides, right? I think I put the link in before into the chat before, but also here's the QR code. Please provide any feedback, whether it's on my session or the whole event or other people's sessions. All of this feedback is very, very useful to the organizers of M365 Chicago. I can tell you that. So, and I know they're giving away the prizes right now for this, but they told me I have to put the slides in. But anyway, but yeah, hopefully some people are winning the prizes. Yay. That are going on. So I think that's actually happening 5 minutes ago as they announced all the winners. So, but that.
All right, Joseph.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a little question about
Sure.
the storage. You're talking about the Teams recording, the ones on the channel and the ones with the on the normal chart. Is it separate in the storage, like one on SharePoint and one on OneDrive?
Yes.
Is it different?
Well, yes, and that's when I said that's a good point too. I should put this that your Microsoft 360, your Teams governance is your Microsoft 365 governance because it's all the services are connected inside Teams. If you have a recording or of a meeting in your chat that is stored in OneDrive of the person who recorded it, so that goes off of their OneDrive storage limit, 1 terabyte usually, right? So if one person is clicking the button all the time for recording all the meetings, those recordings are going to fill up their OneDrive limit. If a team meeting is going on inside a channel, then that meeting is stored in a recordings folder in that channels folder inside Documents Library. So that storage is off of the SharePoint sites limit behind the team sites storage limit. So
okay,
yeah. So whatever
that
policy
means
has been set. Go ahead, sorry.
All right, okay. That means we call both the SharePoint and OneDrive a storage system. And outside being a storage system for the SharePoint, do they have external activities for the SharePoint?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Okay, outside the SharePoint being a storage location, can it actually be something else, like
Oh,
maybe a site creation site? Because I think I've heard some stuff like that.
absolutely. Yeah, no, SharePoint, modern SharePoint can do everything that, classic SharePoint did and more. Right, so what you see here, let me see, yeah, I'm sharing this. So when you go to the SharePoint that's behind the team, right, and this is just the documents library that's part of the team, or sorry, part of the SharePoint site. That's where the Teams files tab is. But this is not a good one to do. I haven't done much with this, but it's a full SharePoint collection. Behind you can have news, you can have communication sites. I don't think I have anything built up on, but yeah, the SharePoint that comes with the team has so much more than just a document library, just a storage. SharePoint is a lot more than a document storage medium. You can keep flows, you can keep planners in there, you can connect forms, all sorts of things. And I don't have anything good on this one. I work in a government agency and I don't have access to show you that. Sorry. But yeah, no, there's a lot more to SharePoint than simply just where those documents get stored and where those files get stored. Yes.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You can, I mean, yeah. I've done too much on stuff I can't show publicly. But
yeah, sure, I understand that.
Yeah, but
Because
the
it
hero
covers a
images
lot
and
of
everything like
sites,
that.
and yeah.
I mean, just take a look at some of the other sites that people have demonstrated today and shown off today to see some of the real power behind SharePoint. But again,
sure.
But that's good to keep in mind, right? So if you have tight storage limits on your OneDrive, I don't want people storing all these files somewhere, so let's only give them like 100 gig in their OneDrive. Policies set up on the admin center for OneDrive, then that's going to restrict how many times they can hit that start recording button or send files back and forth to each other through chat, because those files that they send back and forth to each other are stored in their OneDrive in their Teams chat files folder. So keep that in mind. That's those top level policies are going to affect how people can use Teams. And I think they just made an announcement that meeting recordings are going to automatically, there's going to be a default policy put in Microsoft 365 that meeting recordings are going to automatically delete themselves after 60 days. So unless you make changes to the default to the admin settings of your Microsoft 365, meeting recordings will vanish after 60 days. That I just saw that tweet today, actually. So
Yeah, I got a notification too. Also, we're getting that.
Yeah. So, which is fine. You have 60 days after a meeting is recorded to decide if you want to keep it or not and move it. So, should be able to make that determination in that time frame. So, yeah. But video files are large, and something to keep in mind when you're setting the storage limits for a SharePoint site or for someone's OneDrive, whatever the policies for your organization are for their OneDrive. Any other questions, comments? We got 15 minutes before the next session, which hopefully people have been having a good experience today with, learning a lot. Let's see, the next one up here. Right,
I have one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
Do you know if anybody's going to do a new SBS event site or some kind of hosting anything to help us stick together for having a one source for training opportunities?
All right. You didn't hear this from me.
Did you stop
or the recording on YouTube. No.
Did you stop recording?
So also help host the SharePoint User Group DC here in Washington, DC. And someone made mention at last night's user group that there is something coming in the future. I don't know if near future or whatever, as that sort of replacement, stepping in as a replacement for spsevents.org.
Well, that's promising. Hooray. Thank you for the tidbit.
Yeah. Things are in motion is what I gathered. She was not, she couldn't be as, but I will say that with the MVP program that Microsoft started to encourage open source community, all of this, I call it what they weaponized the community, right? They bought GitHub and weaponized all of these experts and turned us all into open source advocates for their products. So it sort of behooves Microsoft to provide us a weapons platform for weaponized MVPs and community involvement and all the rest. So there are other there are other things that have stepped up in the spsevents.org aftermath, like Collab 365 and a few of the others, free or close to free conferences, but nothing like SBS events. But something along those lines is maybe coming. Is all I can say at this juncture.
Well, thank you for that. That gives me hope.
Right. For everybody else who, I mean, yeah, it was, gosh, 4 years ago. I went to my first SharePoint Saturday in New York City. Of all that, that should not have been my first, because that was amazing. But yeah, I wouldn't.
You really pick them to go for the first.
That's just, yeah, knock it out of the park. Let's just go to the big one. I did go to one of the last ones I did speak at one of the last ones in, I think the last one for Virginia Beach. So SharePoint Saturday Virginia Beach was the first to do it. Second was New York. And so SharePoint Saturday Virginia Beach is like the home. And then the big spectacle is SharePoint Saturday New York City. And I got to do SharePoint Saturday Virginia Beach before they shut their doors. So, which was great to meet all of the people who started this. They're impressive. They truly believed in the power of the community and wanted to provide a free service to just about anybody they could. And Microsoft and Jeff Teeper and all those guys, they like the SharePoint community, and now the Microsoft 365 is the best community in tech, and have to agree. So, I mean, where else can you find stuff like this? Free learning, free people giving up their days just to spread the religion. Evangelize. The technical term is evangelism. So there's that. Yeah. The next session that's coming up in here is what's new with security and compliance for Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive with Drew Madelung. And there are still sessions going on in the other rooms. So
have a great night. I'm going to go over to learning about the tasks to see how they say to wrangle them. I'm going to find out.
There's Microsoft and tasks. For the people that came up with project, it's like, really?
And to do. And then what to use when.
Yeah. There's a lot of choices, but they are putting it together, and it is, if you use the ecosystem, then it can get good. So I know that.
And I think that the tax with team planner on the teams, it's really not giving us what we should actually get.
Yeah,
the setups are different, and the configurations are all different. Yeah,
planner is. I know what they're trying to do with planner, and for what it's designed for the small use case that it falls under, it's great. For day-to-day tasks and just keeping track of stuff in the teams, no. But if you use Microsoft Lists, there's a task tracker template in Microsoft Lists, which you can then add as a tab and build into your team. That's pretty good. So, but planner.
Yeah.
planner is for a start to finish project that involves at least most of the people in the team. Otherwise, it's good for if you repeat it, right? If these are the steps to get from A to Z, and we're going to do this again sometime, then planner is very good. But if it's just, hey, what are you doing today? What's going on? What do I have to do to get, what's my weekly? It's not designed for that.
Yeah.
But anyway. Right, so. All right, so. Thank you for attending, everybody. Thanks a lot for this. Hopefully,
Thank you, Joseph.
pointed you in the right direction for some, why is it? Where is it? And at least, try to contribute to those discussions. And when people start talking about, well, we need to make the OneDrive this small and the SharePoint this small, and it's all virtual. All the ones and zeros are imaginary.
Can we get a slide? Is it possible to get a slide?
All the slides for everybody are in the sessions and schedule part of the Teams here.
All right.
In the files tab of
Sessions
and schedules channel in the January 2022 folder. And in fact, yeah. Which those should be my slides. Yes, those are my slides. Right out of the
All right, okay.
So, but yeah.